Good morning, Wairarapa. It's Anna Cardno here from Wairarapa DHB, and this show is brought to you every fortnight live from Arrow FM, called Wraparound Wairarapa. And the purpose of this show is to let you all know about the different services, support services that are available to you. In the Wairarapa, there are a whole host of support services that are available, that are fabulous services, but what we feel is that perhaps not so many people know about everything that is on offer for you. So this show at 9 o'clock on Arrow FM on a Wednesday is brought to you live every fortnight, recorded the following week, and we are letting you know about what is out there. Today, we have Jane Ross from Whaiora with us. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you. Morena Anna, and morena koutou Wairarapa. Really happy to be back here with you, Anna. I love coming on Arrow FM, and I especially love Wraparound Wairarapa as well.
It's a great concept.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Brilliant.
And it's neat having you here. Listeners may have been aware that we weren't on air in the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I was away with dealing with an own medical event with my mother up north, but we are back here, and it certainly gave me an appreciation of the medical service, as if I wasn't sort of immersed enough in it already. Being personally involved gives you a totally different perspective.
It really does, doesn't it? And I think it also gives us a greater appreciation for all people and all services involved in the health and well-being of our population.
It really, really does. Now, today, Jane, what have you got for us? Tell us all about Whaiora.
Oh, thank you. Well, I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk about Whaiora, and I'm the Communications and Marketing Coordinator. I've been in that role for 3 years. Whaiora itself has been in existence since 1996, and from its inception, it started off offering community services through outreach into the community, and to this day that still is the case, but we've evolved. So I thought we'd just talk about a little bit about the services and how that has evolved over time. So we've just celebrated our 10-year anniversary for the Whaiora Medical Centre, and that is kind of what I see as the front of house. So when you come into the building, we call the building Te Pūtahi Manawa or Whaiora, which means the heart flow of health of Whaiora. You're greeted by the medical centre, but supporting that from 1996 has been an amazing group of community health workers, social workers, wild child tamariki order nurses who go out into the community and visit people in their homes. And we have 3 teams. We've got our tamariki services, child health, kaiarahi services, the navigators into the health system, and we also have our whānau services, and we work all the way from the boundary of the Remataka Ranges right up to Mount Bruce and everywhere in between.
And you really do, because we see the Whaiora cars just travelling all of the time, going out and doing what they do out in the community. You see them everywhere.
We do get that lovely feedback of that our brand and our identity and our people being out there in the community. So that's really lovely when we hear that feedback.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Great.
Yeah. So I thought if we talk a little bit about our community services in particular, because that really is the foundations of Whaiora, and our founder, one of the very key members of Whaiora's sort of background, its history and its kaupapa, was a lady named Dr. Janice Wen, and she's a very well-known person. She's been honoured for her contributions to the health sector, and we just cherish her. And she was part of a hui that took place at Papawai Marae in 1996, where the idea first came up for developing a bi-Māori for Māori model of healthcare. And she worked with a group of local iwi and stakeholders in the health sector as well, and she led a group of community health workers and nurses to actually go into people's homes and visit them and have honest and open discussions around health and welfare and care, and also being there to support people into knowing about the services, knowing what's available, but also, enabling and empowering that information and knowledge so that anyone, any person, can be self-managing of their own health.
And breaking down that fear around that we all have around clinical information and bringing it into the realm of what is important for them and what they understand.
Yeah.
I think that's a really key thing, isn't it, to be able to totally understand health in the way that it means something to you, rather than, often you'll be sitting there with clinicians in the medical centres and in the clinics and not really understand how it relates to you in your everyday life, whereas when you're there and you're in their homes and you're part of that every day, this is who I am, it makes far more sense, doesn't it?
I believe it does in terms of what one of our values is whakawhanaungatanga, which means connectedness, and we feel that it's really important for people to be connected into the community, to be social, to be participating in their healthcare and in society. And this is what would be attributing to the welfare of somebody's social wellness, for example. So we talk about looking at the whole person when we're talking about somebody's health and wellness. And I think during that early home visiting, those sorts of conversations were happening around, okay, so you might have some physical health issues, but how is that affecting your hinengaro, your mental health? So let's talk about that and have conversations around that and look at all the people that could support a person and a whānau on that path to wellness. So
and I think one of the other things that we come across a lot too is that we can provide a medical translation of or interpretation of what somebody needs, but actually they might have a completely different priority for them as well. So that whole of health thing and actually looking at the person, how they live, how they want to live and what's important to them is what you can do in their home, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been having recent conversations about our older population in regard to that as well, because far too often we project what we think our older generation want and need, but really we need to sit down and take the time to have that conversation and listen to their voices and their wisdom and their knowledge, because deep down they actually know what it is that they need to be well. So it's the time.
There's some cool stuff that we did at Wairarapa DHB a year or so back, where we did some work with Lakeview School and their Mahitahi Kaitahi program, which was a really, and we were asking some of the whānau that were there. So Mahitahi Kaitahi is where the school brings in the families, and it's intergenerational, and they come in and the kids do these great presentations about things that they've been doing at school, and then they have a sort of a theme to it. So we had a healthcare theme, and we were invited in and we asked them some questions, and some of the information that came back about what is important to them in healthcare was quite a surprise. Some of the things
was it really?
It really, really was. And it's about, we can make some observations and we can expect what we think is correct, and we can be way off the ballpark in terms of what people are really, really wanting.
So I think with one of the things that I really love about the kaupapa of Whaiora is we're very good. We take time to build up relationships with our clients and with the whānau, and I think part of that we need to be listening to the intergenerations as well. I think that's a really important part of the conversation around child health, tamariki health and whānau health as well. So when I first started working at Whaiora, I really wanted to come to an understanding about what we understand wellness to be, and we were having a lot of conversations about treating the whole person and looking at health from a holistic point of view, but what does it actually entail? So we've recently done some work on our values, and particularly how we understand each of our values at Whaiora and out into the community, and we included multi-generations in that conversation. So we had our aunties, we had Auntie Sally and Auntie Mickey involved in those conversations, and through the development, and we had a group of kaimahi of all ages that were part of that conversation as well. So when people now come into Whaiora, you can visually see exactly what we mean by wellness. We've taken the time to capture images from really important occasions at Whaiora. We have photographs now that were captured on the day of our blessing at the new site. we were gifted the wonderful photographer Mike Hayden for our blessing. Isn't he great? Just captures people so well in the moment and time and place.
And it's that the picture tells a story.
That's
right?
it, yeah. So we
Fantastic.
had those photos, and then we were re-gifted Mike a year later by Trust House. They're our landlords. He came back a year later to see how we had moved in to our new environment and how we had evolved in that space. So we had those. And then I talked about Dr. Janice when she wrote her autobiography, A Sort of Life, it's called. We hosted her book launch. That was really important for us to do. So we again had another photographer, this time Dave Lintott. So we had all of these beautiful images of all the people who are connected to Whai Ora over some really important occasions in our history, in our recent history too. And that multi-generation was captured, and we could see, right, if I look at this photo, to me this speaks about aroha. But let's have a conversation. What does aroha actually mean for all of us? So it's been a work that's taken maybe 3 years of my time. But it's not my time, it's our time, and it's valuable time, because we want to know and get it right what we understand as wellness. We're all on a path to wellness, and we're all part of that story here in the Wairarapa.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what about the we're always very organic when we start talking.
Yes, we are.
What about the intersectoral approach to healthcare and to wellness, in terms of when you're out there in the community, you're visiting a family, a patient perhaps, and their whānau, and you're looking around and you're seeing some of the things within the home that may be contributing to their lack of wellness, or things that could be improved. And I'm thinking about things like warm housing, for example, perhaps nutrition, looking at the food that they might have, or the way the children, what your observations of the children, how they might be living, in terms of, are they spending a lot of time on computers and inside, and those sorts of things, or what are the sports components. You're able to do that when you're in the person's home, aren't you? So,
well, and it is about going in and identifying if somebody has a long-term respiratory condition, and we see this, yes, it's part of somebody's physical health, but that also has longitudinal effects on somebody's mental health and indeed on their environmental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we actually do recognise environmental wellness as really key to somebody's whole health. And for that reason, when I talk about environmental wellness, I'm talking about the health of the Wairarapa.
Absolutely.
And, kia ora.
Oh, hello. We have a guest.
Hi to my Jax.
Good morning, Jax.
Welcome to our kōrero.
Welcome. So, Jane, would you like to introduce
Absolutely,
Jax?
it's my pleasure to do that. So this is my wonderful colleague, my fellow kaimahi at Whai Ora. This is Jacqueline Lumsden. We call her Jax. Yeah. And I'm really happy that you're here with us today. I started off talking about Whai Ora as a whole and the services and our history, and I talked about our lovely Dr. Janice Wen, and I've been talking about looking at wellness from a holistic point of view, and then I was going to start leading into community services. So we were talking about the importance of the home visiting and having those very honest and courageous conversations about people's whole health and all the different aspects of it.
And we were just about to launch into
smoke free.
Aye.
Okay, well that's my little forte. I've been at Whai Ora for quite some time. They call me the fossil in the business. So I've got 16 years experience of working with people with tobacco addiction. And in those years I've learnt some really surefire ways that will really cut through all the other stuff and get people on that journey to wellness. And we don't just look at the actual smoking. Smoking is a symptom of a lifestyle that's gotten quite busy. And it's sometimes for our whānau, it's just a little bit of time out. That's why they call them things like holiday, 5 minutes holiday. And, cigarettes hunt in packs, and they kill in packs too. So it's something that we really... It's a big issue in New Zealand, all the smoking-related cause of deaths. The reason why I'm in this job, the mahi, is because, sadly, my mother succumbed to throat cancer when I was 19. My children grew up with no grandmother, but not only that, none of my aunties and uncles, they never made it past 60, just another Māori statistic. And it's not just Māori that it affects, all lungs are the same colour at the end of the day. So it's not just a job, it's a passion, it's a vocation, and I really enjoy helping people get over that hump. They do all the hard work, I just connect all the dots, that's all I do. And I'm there to support and help strategise people getting through that difficult first few weeks, and then you're just flying for flying colours. So that's what it's pretty much about.
And let's face it, it doesn't. When people are trying to quit smoking, it can be tough for some. It can be tougher, for others. If it doesn't work the first time, you're there, aren't you?
Well, the thing is, I say to people, when you go to a swimming pool, are you the type of person that dives in, doesn't, some people just dive in, they set a quit date, and they do it. There's no mucking about. Then there's people like me. I like to dip my toes in. I like to have a little bit of a splash in the water. I like to go down rung by rung by rung. And oh yes, I'm just explaining. My personal journey, if you want to get personal, I tried to stop smoking 52 times a year. Do you know how many times I failed? 53. And I learned 53 ways of how not to stop smoking. But by the 54th, because I stuck in there, because I kept at it, I got there. And I was a bit like a born again. I just had to go tell everybody all my wonderful ways. And before I even started working at Whaiora, I'd already helped family members, because they looked at me and said, Jacqueline, if you can do it, there's no reason I can't, because they just saw me, are you stopping again? It just became I became the butt, excuse the pun, of lots of people's jokes. But I was very determined, and I got there in the end, which is why I feel that with that knowledge and that empathy, I know that feeling, I know that despair, I know every cigarette you have, you think, is this going to be the one that gives me cancer? Is this going to be the one that, starts it all off? And I know that most smokers, and I can really say it from the bottom of my heart, don't want to smoke but feel powerless on how to go about it.
I hear that a lot. I hear, I was a smoker for a long time as well. I didn't really want to be. I was in the closet. I wasn't one of those people that sort of social smoked. It was my 5-minute holiday. It was my 5 minutes outside to myself, just to get away from phones and noise and office and dare I say it, my busy life. But I learnt through the processes and I quit and started many times too. And I learned through that process that when I went outside to get my 5 minutes, I didn't necessarily have to have a cigarette.
No, well, that's right. So I think
I just needed to breathe.
It's sort of confession time, because I also, as Jax is well aware, I am an ex-smoker myself from many years ago, I have to say, many years ago now that I gave up. For me, it was almost an expectation, and thankfully, correct me if I'm wrong, I think things have changed. There was an expectation when I was young, which, clearly I'm not very old now, so it can't have been that long ago, but when I was at university, which was a hell of a long time ago, it was an expectation. Everybody smoked. It was just what we did. And actually, I can remember when I started smoking, which was actually when I was at school, prior to university, but when I was at school, at boarding school, I smoked because you were meant to, and because it was something daring, and because it was really just a bucking the system, really, wasn't it? That's how, it was just something to do that you weren't meant to do, so that's why we did it. Yeah. And I can remember not even really enjoying it. To start, and almost forcing yourself to enjoy it to the point where it became habitual, and then giving up was hell. For me, it was hell, because we didn't have we didn't have the smoking cessation. No. If we did, we didn't know about it. And so, maybe that's a good lead into how do people get in touch with you, Jax?
Well, it's really quite simple. We have an office in 394 Queen Street, down the south end of Kapuni. That's Whaiora's main office. We can go in there physically, and you can actually ask, about our smoking cessation program. That's one. I'll beat the feet. We've also got a wonderful Facebook page, and actually, if you check in now, really, come on, there is some really great prizes up for grabs, and we've got a great competition. I'm not going to give away too much, but really just go and, let your fingers do the walking. So we've got a great Facebook, and in there we've got you can message, or is there a referral process still there?
There is. There's a link up to actually go straight to the referral form.
So that's another way. If you don't want to show, still want to keep it quiet. Everything's confidential. Nothing will be shared without your permission. So it's not a free broadcast who's coming on the program. That's another great thing, and that's another way. In the hospital, if you're admitted and you get sent home with patches, you think, well, how am I going to carry on that? They can do a referral. Your GP can do a referral. In fact, there's many ways. You'll see our little cars, our little blue buzzy cars, and some of our cars have got sign writing on them. So if you see that number, dial that number. We're really accessible. We are waiting to help you.
Absolutely. So the number is 0800 494 246, and the referral form's also on the Whaiora website.
Yeah. And we also link to it from the Wraparound DHB website too. So there's sort of probably a lot of ways that people can get to you. What can they expect if they get in touch with you?
They expect a chirpy phone call back. What normally happens is that if I get a referral, I will make contact. One of the coaches, not just myself, will make contact. And really, it's striking while the iron is hot. So while we're in that mood, we need to really get hold of you within those 3 days. And once we do that, we make an appointment once we've chatted and we found a day and time that's convenient with you. Now, the great thing about Whaiora is an outreach, which means we remove those barriers. If you feel you can't come in, or for whatever reason, no transport, or you're too far away in the South Wairarapa, we go from Mount Bruce to Palliser, so we can come to you. So all you need to do when I talk to you is say, well, did you want to come in, or do I come to you? We always give you options. Great to have options. And then we work out our first date, and then we have an assessment. Now, we don't expect people to stop straight away. If they would like to stop straight away, that's fantastic, we're great. But we realise if you've been smoking for 20 odd years or 15 odd years, we've got a few things to prepare for, a good foundation. So we work out all those tips and strategies of how we can keep you. I tell you, stopping is the easy part. Where I come in handy is staying stopped.
Because of the habits that are formed. I mean, you've talked about that too, Anna, and a lot of my role models were smokers, my parents, but also my teachers. And here's the story. I can remember in Form 2, I've just placed myself in an age bracket there by saying Form 2, but that's all good. One of my teachers offered me a cigarette. We were having a chat in his office. He pulled out a packet of cigarettes. He lit one and offered one to me. Wow. I was 13. So, it was normalised.
It was, and those sorts of stories. I mean, a very similar thing happened to me back in the day. So, it's so different now, thankfully.
Different. Yeah. I think another story is I heard in the maternity wards, they had ashtrays and things.
Right.
They did.
And we are going back a few years, and I do remember we are going back, dinosaur years. And I remember going on the rail car when I was a kid, and at the end of the little red rail cars, they had little ashtrays. It was just quite, there were ashtrays in buses, there were ashtrays.
Oh, in planes. In planes,
The first thing that my family did when they buckled up on an airplane, because my maternal side of the family are down south, people lit up cigarettes as soon as you buckled up.
Yeah, so things have changed a whole heap. It's still, it's more of an acceptable vice, I suppose, than in the younger age group, because vaping is probably the next thing we probably might want to touch on.
I was going to ask about that, but having said that, Jax, when you're talking about acceptable vice, am I correct in thinking that there are less youth now taking up smoking? I see a lot less than you used to.
There is a much less. The issue now is vaping. There seems to be some evidence being shown that youth are uptaking vaping instead of smoking, which would, my personal opinion is, the kids that were going to take up vaping, we're going to be the kids that take up smoking, because we have a rebellious band of teenagers that want to. We have to also remember that nicotine has a calming stimulant for a lot of people, and also at the same time it also gives you a little kick. So there's a kind of myth about that it's the nicotine that's bad for you. No, the nicotine is the drug that you need, that you're addicted to, that make you smoke. What really does the damage is the 4,500 chemicals that you inhale when you take the cigarettes. And so when people talk about vaping, they're going straight for the nicotine. Now, although vaping isn't as dangerous as smoking,
because it doesn't have the arsenic and everything else in it. Is
their studies are still out on how long term. I'm an advocate for, if you need to smoke when you go out socially, then vaping for a short term measure to stop smoking can be very beneficial for some. Although in saying that, I've met plenty of reformed smokers that Champix didn't work, nothing worked for them, but vaping has, and they still have. And they, what happens is that they just bring the vape out once every so often. So it's 100 ways to skin a cat, pardon the pun, or there's different ways to stop smoking. There's no one sure way. I'm happy to discuss the pros and cons of vaping. I'm quite experienced in those kind of areas, and I can recommend or not recommend. It's really, vaping has its place with a plan, like a plan.
Sure. So vaping is one tool to help stop smoking,
yes.
and Champix is another one.
Yes.
So tell us about the Champix.
The Champix is Now, there's been a few changes in Champix. They've shown in now. Used to be you could only get one subsidised script a year, which is, you had to wait. If you'd been on Champix, you quit for 3 months, then went back in the fourth, you'd have to wait another 8 months to get another script. Wonderful news, listeners. We have 2 prescriptions. You can get it twice in 1 year. So every 6 months you could get one. But there is a prerequisite, and you have at least tried Zyban, patches, gum, lozenges for it to be subsidised, because Champix on its own is quite expensive. You're looking at $300-400 for one script. So the government has been very generous and dropping it, and so you can get it up to 2 times a year. However, there are prerequisites, and they normally would like you to be with a behavioural support, which is a coach,
which is you.
Yeah, because studies have shown, and I know this. If you've got somebody batting for you in your corner, if you've got someone that's not whānau, that's not a friend, who's not going, oh, you're not smoking again, you've got someone who's a trained professional specialist, which our coaches are, they're the best person to have in your corner. So so Champix is a good drug. It's just as effective as patches. However, it doesn't suit everybody. You can have nausea. That's where a coach comes in. We know how to sidestep all that. And it's, remember people, it's not a magic pill. Yes, it shuts down the receptors in your brain that are screaming out for nicotine. However, there is behavioural change that needs to go with it.
Absolutely, and that's what we're talking about with the habitual stuff and what you associate with that smoking break and how it,
triggers.
And because there are the good bits that it brings to. So you do sit down for 10 minutes, or you do, those sorts of things. So how can you do that without smoking?
And there's another big thing that we don't talk about it in the room, and that is that smoking. When you stop smoking, there is weight gain, and I think we really need to have that courageous conversation about weight gain. Some people put on weight. Some people don't. Some people have a high metabolism, but the longer you've been smoking, it all depends. This is where a coach comes in handy. Is that, are you smoking because you have an emotional trigger that causes you to reach for a quick fix to self-soothe, or are you smoking because you have an addictive, you need to feel? And sometimes it's those two things. And what we do is that we tease it out. We tease it out why and when you are smoking, and we break it down to what's bite-sized chunks. So yes, you can expect to put 2 or 3 kilos on. Yes, your metabolism does slow down. And the reason your metabolism slows down is that when you're smoking, your body goes, okay, I'm not going to digest that food. I'm going to be too busy pumping those toxic poisons away from your major organs, so I won't digest that food. So what happens? You stay fuller for longer. da-da. So, there's quite a bit of readjusting, but just remember this one thing. You can always lose 2 or 3 kilos. You cannot grow a new lung.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great way to wrap up that smoking conversation, Jax. Thank you. That was great. So if anyone needs some help to stop smoking, they can go onto the Whaiora website, the Wairarapa DHB website, Facebook pages.
There's no... The whole community is there to support you to stop smoking. It's not just one particular, it's a whole Wairarapa wellness community who are there. We're not just working individually, we're working together for you to have a greater wellness.
We are, and we all want everyone to be as well as they can, don't we? Yes. Jane, just before we finish, and we've got about 30 seconds to go, you were going to tell me about the Matariki work that you're doing at Whaiora celebrations.
The stars ascended into the skies last week. So we haven't been able to see the cluster yet, but tomorrow the skies are going to be clear, and Friday as well. So it's the perfect time to be up there stargazing. Now, for us, we always look at Whaiora as Matariki as part of Māori New Year, but the symbolism that goes with that is a celebration. Traditionally this is when people would be celebrating all the hard work of harvesting and all the food is in the storehouse. So it's like you got your ducks in a row, let's have a celebration. But we've tied that into our Matariki smoke-free prize giveaway. Now this is what Jax was alluding to. If you go onto the Facebook page, you're going to find that. We really want to encourage anyone who wants to sign up to the Wairarapa Stop Smoking Service to check out what's on our Facebook page, because you will go into a prize draw for some beautiful self-care products.
Brilliant. Yes. And who doesn't like self-care products? Well, that is the end of our session for today for Wraparound Wairarapa. It's been wonderful having you on the show. Thank you, Jane. And Jax, that's brilliant. And we will be back. We will be bringing Jane back. She's brilliant talent in this show to help talk about the services that are available out there in the community for all of you. So thank you, Jane, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, brilliant.